Technology permeates our daily lives. It is always important to think about what technology should do instead of what it can do. I'm Richard Koh, and welcome to our Tech 101 with our Technology Strategist. Hello everyone, hope you're having a good time. Welcome to this episode of Tech 101 with our Tech Strategist here at Microsoft. So today I have Ryan, and Ryan is a tech strategist with our enterprise commercial sector. So Ryan, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Definitely. So thanks Richard for having me on your show. I'm really glad to be here. So, like what Richard mentioned, as my day in the life of tech strategist, right? I listen to customer business imperatives, help them strategize. Hey, if I want to embark on a digital transformation journey, and I have all these legacy systems, and I might have a hybrid cloud system, how can I modernize in a way that's efficient? So I think my day-to-day basically encompass addressing challenges in that area for them.
Okay, so efficiency is something that I picked up from what you just said. This is very important to your customer,
Correct.
Especially when they are trying to transform, whether is it optimizing their back-end operation, building new applications and things like this. So I know that just in talking to you about building application itself, open source is certainly one of those big toolkit that a lot of your customers leveraged on. And so tell me a little bit about what Microsoft is doing in this area. What have you learned so far?
Great, thanks, Richard. So I think, like what you mentioned, for a lot of enterprises, in order to stay competitive, they need this thing called developer agility or even velocity, right? And more often than not, rather than insourcing and building such IPs, they have to leverage on open source tools, right? Like reuse, that notion of reuse. And we know that open source is a collaborative sport.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here today. So in the open source space, why is it important, or why is it relevant for enterprises now, right? According to a report in Synopsys 2018, they say that more than 90% of the applications that's deployed in the world now actually leverage open source. And again, McKinsey's research, they did talk about saying that in order to remain competitive in the next decade, you actually need to leverage open source for that agility so that you can, as an organization, focus on your core competency, right? While you develop applications. And to your point, what is Microsoft doing in the open source space? And I'm sure, Richard, you can relate. I think Microsoft's open source journey started in 2014 with that whole Windows XML installer, right? And since then, we have come a long way, from Apache Hadoop to Node.js running on Windows as well as Java. These are some of the contributions that Microsoft has in the open source space. And I think for Microsoft, what we want to encourage is definitely, to build on your existing tools, run in an environment that you're comfortable with, rather than having to conform to tools that's predefined for you. I think there's always this stigma, right, saying that, hey, if I move to a hyperscaler, I actually have to conform to their tools. And my customers look and tell me, hey, Ryan, I even before moving to the cloud, I actually have my own environment, my own development pipeline. So if I move to the cloud, right, would that be a challenge? Do I have to reinvent the wheel? Do I have to refactor, right? So, and I think that's where the challenge is. And the reason why we're here today is really to talk about Microsoft open source being open source friendly, right? So, and that really segues into Microsoft on Azure, right? Because I think when we think about agility, cloud agility, the first thing we think about is really, hey, how can I leverage the economic benefits of the cloud, right? The scalability, the burstability, just developing on the cloud while maintaining something that I'm comfortable with, my own tool sets, right? So again, just to talk about that whole Microsoft ecosystem on Azure, right? I'm sure GitHub is something we acquired in 2018, right? So the rationale for that, in fact, was to ensure that while you want to develop on the cloud, you have an end-to-end pipeline, something you're comfortable with. GitHub being a very popular source repo, that's number one. So we want to make sure that we are able to capitalize on that GitHub Enterprise to ensure that you can enjoy the scalability as well as security on the cloud, right? As well as on the Kubernetes stack, we have containers and everything that's friendly cloud-native databases. And lastly, on the stream, the tail end is on around things like application development. What are some tool sets we can provide? So Microsoft has the end-to-end ecosystem. That's number one, right? And I think we have come a long way. On the data and AI space, we also have a lot of cloud native, open source friendly databases.
There you go.
Correct. Like one of them, it's Postgres, MySQL.
Yes.
That's right. And of course, how about non-cloud native databases? Some of us might use things like Gremlin, Cassandra DB.
Cassandra, yeah.
We do have API support for that. So you can see that while Microsoft, we do have our own product suite, we're actually ensuring that we do support this ecosystem of open source development. So I think that's very crucial.
So there's a lot of flexibility. There are a lot of
Correct.
choices as well. And I like it when you talk about that agility and velocity for developers. You know, I was a developer long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's always that, sometimes the challenge is always you're not focusing on the application logic, but most of the time you're just mucking around with infrastructure type of
Precisely.
stuff. And it's taking a lot of time versus focusing on the application logic and the value that you want to bring to the business applications users, for example. So I heard that you got something in this space to show us later on. But before we go there, tell us a little bit more about what you're going to demo to us.
The demo is really going to show, how easy it is to develop on your own terms, right? Basically, I'm just going to create a, Flask is the framework that I'm using. It's a Python-based framework. It's basically a simple application, right? And I want to show you that it's very easy. You can just, as a developer, I just want to focus on writing code. I don't want to bother about the infrastructure management, or what kind of security, or even like a VNet, the nitty-gritty stuff. So the first part of the demo will show you how easy it is to package your code base and just publish it as a application service.
And
Basically a web app.
literally in minutes.
In minutes, in 5 to 10 minutes, right? So that's number one. And number two, I want to talk about infrastructure as code. So I think for most of you viewers out there, you would know that there's this infrastructure as code called Terraform by HashiCorp, right?
Yep.
For most of the organizations, when they're embarking on their multi-cloud strategy, in fact, they leverage a tool like this. And there's always the stigma saying that, hey, I use Terraform across my multi-cloud strategy, my hybrid cloud strategy. When I want to develop on Azure, right, I don't want to refactor or change the code base. So Terraform is a very good example. Of course, in Microsoft Azure, we do have ARM templates, but then again, there's an alternative where we do support open source tools, right? So the second part of the demo is going to focus on that. And the crux of it is really just to show you, hey, we do support open source friendly tools. You can deploy on the fly, on your own terms, without the hassle. So,
yeah. Wow, that's very cool. You know what? There's a special place in my heart with HashiCorp Terraform. I saw it about 8 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is great. And it's come a long way. So let's go to the demo.
Hi everyone. So for the first part of my demo, I'm going to show you how easy it is to deploy a web app onto Azure Web App Service within a matter of minutes. All right, and so over here on the left, you can see that I've written some code in Python, leveraging the Flask framework. And to just give you a flavor of what the application I've written, it's essentially just a simple hash generator, if I can call it that way. Right, we have the hello world here, great. To show that locally it's running, this is my hash calculator. I'll key in some string, select the SHA algorithm that I want to hash it with. All right, I have the digester, I have the length. I'm happy with this application. So now, how do I package it quickly and deploy it as a web app onto Azure? So I'm going to run a couple of commands. Essentially, just let me close this. Great. So the first command I'm going to run is basically the Azure Web App app. Just quickly copy. Great. All right. So what this does is basically I'm telling Azure, right, to create a web app with this VM SKU over here, and I'm creating the name of my app is basically called Flask Web App, and I'm deploying it onto Southeast Asia, all right, which is Singapore region. So over here you can see that what it's doing, it's going through some automation showing that there's no web app service called Flask Web App that exists. It's creating it in Southeast region. It's creating the app service plan that's required. And if we quickly switch over to the Azure portal, you can see that over here, previously there were 4 resource groups. Now there's the one that's created via the command, right? Very quickly now, if you go in, you can see that it's creating the app service plan. Great. It's packaging my code and deploying it as a code base on the preferred runtime. So in this case, I'm, it's on Python, it's on a Linux VM. So just wait a while. Great, you can see that, hey, the web app is created. Let's wait a couple of minutes for it to update. So what's great about this is that, as a developer, I can focus on writing my code. I do not have to be concerned about, just really the underlying infrastructure, right? What I have is a PaaS service. I focus on writing my code. I can either choose it to deploy as a runtime of my preference, or even as a Docker container if I would like to. And what's cool about this is that I can even create it with auto scaling, right? It's scalable from the start. So just let me go to Azure Model real quick. And if I go to auto scaling right over here, you can see that, hey, if required, I can actually configure auto scaling for my application, right? I can create a manual scale. If I want, I can actually, collect some metrics, right? And scale my resource accordingly. So now if we just quickly pivot back to the app service, I can see that it's more or less created. Oops, sorry about that. Great. So what it's saying that, hey, your deployment is done. Great. You can access it via this endpoint. So quickly now we have the local one that's running previously. Let's close it. Let's go to this endpoint that was provided. Great. As you can see that, hey, it's running. Let me just go to the application. All right. The SHA hash calculator is here. Just make sure that it's working. Hey, great. It's working accordingly as planned, right? Great. So you might be asking, hey, this is really very convenient. Within a matter of minutes, I'm able to write some code, upload it to a hosting service easily. So how about if I want to quickly update my code, right? How would that work? So just for the purposes of simulating, I would like to bootstrap my application, right? Just for some style sheets and whatnot, really from a CSS perspective, right? Okay, great. So I've written added some code. So simply to update the web app, right? I really bear in mind that I have already created the necessary resources. I can just run this simple code called AZ web app up. So what it does is it will detect again, right? Go through, hey, you have the necessary resources, resource group created, your app service plan, and it will repackage your new code base and basically deploy it onto the your web app service. Okay, so let's just give it a while. I'll close this real quick. All right, great. So as you can see that they have updated deployed my new code base, right? Package my code base, deploy it on the same infrastructure, and they provided me that endpoint. So I'm happy with this. So what I'll just go ahead and copy, paste it here. Okay, seems like it's working. And you can see, great. So I've updated my code base with some bootstrap. It looks all fancy, a lot aesthetically more pleasing to the eye. Great. So I hope with this demo has essentially showed you how easy it is to write a code base of my preference in my runtime, Python with a runtime, Python on my Flask framework. And as a developer, I do not have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. I just focus on writing my code, and I can deploy it to a scalable web service on the fly. So for the next part of the demo, we'll be looking at one of the more popular infrastructure as code tools, open source tools, so Terraform by HashiCorp, right? So again, it's a very popular tool which most organizations are adopting now. So to get right into it, right? Again, infrastructure as code provides you a very predictable and reliable way to stand up environments across different platforms, so one of them being Azure. So you can imagine from a IT ops point of view, right? If there's a business requirement to stand up certain environments, be it for test purposes or even certain campaigns or events, you want to do it in a very predictable way that conforms to your IT and governance policies, right? So what Terraform provides you, or infrastructure as code tools provide you, is a framework, right, where you can cover a blueprint to automate and deploy stand-up environments that falls within the confines of the blueprint. So you can see that I did some very simple template for Terraform. So what I'm going to do is just create a resource group. Within the resource group, I'll create a VNet, subsequently a subnet, and I'll create a VNIC, which I'll assign to a virtual machine, in this case being a Windows virtual machine. And you'll notice that I will assign some text to that. That is for, to facilitate the ease of charging and cross BU billing, right? And of course, create some disks, and I'll create a bastion host to simulate how we can securely access the environment. Okay, just to get right into it, this is Terraform. So just to start it off, we execute a command called Terraform plan. So what's this? What this instructs Terraform to do is to basically sort of pass the blueprint, right, that you have written, and just to really iron out the sequence of events and dependencies. For instance, you can't create a subnet before you create a VNet. So you have to create a resource group before you can create the other building blocks. So what Terraform does is that it builds this sequence of events and steps, right, to help you stand up your environments. So I'm happy with, there are 8 steps that will take place. I'm happy with this. I'll go ahead and click, enter Terraform apply. So what this does again is that it said, okay, based on this, I will deploy this state onto Azure, right? So let's give it a while. So again, you'll say that, all right, these are the steps I'm going to perform. Are you happy with that? Let's go ahead and say yes. So what happens is that Terraform takes this as a set of instructions, right, to say that, okay, Azure, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create a resource group. I'm going to look at the dependencies. I'm things that they can create concurrently, they will do it. Things that there's dependencies, they will actually wait on the previous step to be completed, right? There will be some polling frequency, whatnot. So if we pivot back quickly to the resource group, we can see that, let's give it a quick refresh. Yes, there is a Terraform resource group that's created, right? So if we put this side by side, you can actually appreciate that within the resource group, it has created the VNIC for me, which is great. It has created Terraform VNet, apologies, there's a spelling error there. And it has created the Bastion host and the public IP. So you see, from an IT ops point of view, it's very easy, or rather it gives me that confidence that, hey, this environment that I'm standing up for whichever purposes for my BU, right, it would be within the confines of the blueprint I've defined. Again, I'm not afraid of configuration drift. I'm not afraid that, I would open certain policies or even NSGs, right, and network security groups, certain ports, certain protocols that I do not wish to. It will all be created according to the confines of the blueprint. And something, like the text that I've mentioned that I built it as part of the blueprint, is to ease the facilitation of charging bill back, right? Charge and bill back. So for instance, let's say that this environment that we stand up for, it's for HR function, right? So I via the text, I can actually see that, okay, I know that this set of resources is consumed by a certain BU, and I can build them or even cross-charge accordingly. So this is just one of the convenient functions of text, right? All right. So while the Terraform is actually going through that entire deployment, I think it will take a while. So more often than not, most of the components here will take about 2-3 minutes. I think the Bastion host will take a while, close to 5 minutes. So yeah, let's give it a while, and once we're ready, we'll show you how to access the environment via the Bastion host. All right, after some video editing magic, we can see that Terraform has completed standing up the environment according to the blueprint. So let's just hit refresh on the resource group. Let's go into the Terraform VM. Everything seems to be working great. So let's go to the Bastion service. Okay, it's up. So let me just quickly pull out the username and password for the VM. Okay, so again, this is just a demo. Definitely would not recommend hard coding the username and password in your Terraform blueprint template. Let's quickly grab the password right here. Again, for password management, right, key management, whatnot, you can either leverage services like Azure Service, Key Vault Service, or alternatively, if you have your own key management system, you can leverage that as well. So as you can see, within a matter of minutes, you have completed standing up the environment according to the blueprint that you have defined. From a IT ops perspective, or even an administrator, right? I have confidence that, hey, the configuration is as per planned. I won't deploy overly oversized or undersized VM. My resources will be as per how I've defined in terms of quantity and the boundaries, right? Which is great. So I have that confidence. So, and you can see we have access to our virtual machine, which is great.
So Ryan, that was a fantastic demo. I mean, you made it seem so easy, very flexible, very efficient. So what should our audience here take away from watching your demo?
So thanks Richard for your kind words. I think the crux of it for the demo is that, hey, moving to the cloud or even building your application on the cloud, it doesn't have to be, it's not rocket science, right? Whatever you're comfortable with, you can build on your own terms. I think that is the key message that if you want to take away, that would be it. Yep.
Very cool, very cool. On your own terms. And I like that because I think what we're trying to do is to make sure that we bring the plethora of choices and flexibility for our customers. So let's just switch gears a little bit. I know, Ryan, when you join us, you're really big on the open source efforts here at Microsoft. So tell me a little bit about, share with the audience a little bit about our strategy in this space and perhaps some of the projects that we're involved in.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So I think there's this thing called the Microsoft Open Source program. So essentially, it's a collection of projects from the open source community where we really just contribute and scale. And I think the crux of it, from a strategy point of view, the reason why this program was set up was really to make it easy for enterprises to include open source as part of their strategy. That is as simple as it is. And if you do have time, we can look at the site, but there are tons of projects there. And I just want to call out a notable few. One of it is the CCF, which is basically the confidential consortium framework. Basically, it's just a secure blockchain framework that was co-developed in the open source community. The other one would be the OpenSSF. I think this one is very notable because there's also this concern. While we incorporate open source as part of our innovation strategy, we want to make sure that they are credible, they are secure. And being part of this OpenSSF community, what Microsoft does is we ensure that, hey, the code base, the open source libraries that you're using, secure. Yeah.
Fascinating. So if our customers and partners watching here today want to learn more about it, where would they go?
So for everyone out there, if you really want to learn more about open source projects within Microsoft ecosystem, please go to opensource.microsoft.com/programs.
Well, Ryan, it's been a pleasure having you. I learned so much.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. And for all the viewers that's watching, thanks again for taking the time to join us on this episode of Tech 101. I will see you all next time.
See you.